On a personal level, my greatest moment in reading your book, occurred towards the end of chapter two. I want you to see this scenario. I'm sitting at home in my reading chair. I have this chair that I love reading in, and I'm sitting there. I have a cup of tea. I'm happily reading along, really enjoying your book, enjoying this tea. And then suddenly I see these references that you start making later in chapter two to the Baha'i community. Now, of course, I'm a Baha'i, and so I read this. I almost spilt my tea all over myself. I was just so stunned. I was so excited. And I'm sure that every Baha'i who reads your book, if they don't know that that's coming, they would have a similar kind of reaction,
Right.
that
You
I
didn't
had.
expect it, right?
I
Yeah.
didn't expect it.
Yeah.
It caught me by surprise. For the benefit of
Yeah.
those who may not know what I'm referring to here, maybe you can help complete the picture and share the references that you make in the book to the Baha'i community. Share that with our audience.
Well, look, I'm no expert, right? So I'll let you correct me where I get things wrong. But I basically was casting about, asking everyone I interviewed, everyone I knew, can you think of an organization or an institution or a country or a state, whatever, that has managed to create on purpose a culture of good conflict, where there are rituals and traditions and norms that seem designed to keep us out of high conflict by creating healthy conflict, right? And my friend Jen Brandel, who's the journalist who has done stories about the Baha'is in Chicago and elsewhere, she said, well, have you ever heard of the Baha'i tradition? And I said, no. And so I did a bunch of reading and reached out to James Samimi Farr, who was at the time the head of communications in the Washington office of the Baha'is, and realized there's this whole religious faith I knew nothing about, totally fascinating, in which the overarching principle is that we are all connected. So we can't give up on each other, right? If all the spiritual traditions and all of humanity is connected and is one, and we have to find ways to subvert the ego, right? And the us versus them thinking. And in day-to-day business of Baha'i groups, it seemed like there were some nice traditions around that, right? That I now try to steal and emulate in my own work. Like, for example, when Baha'is have to make decisions because it's very sort of democratized, right? They will have a meeting, and if someone has an idea, it becomes everyone's idea. So you stop saying, oh, Dwayne's idea to do this makes a lot of sense to me, right? And because then you start having ownership over these ideas and your ego gets involved. But it becomes everyone's idea. And then likewise with elections, you're not allowed to campaign, right? But if you get asked to serve, you got to serve. And the ego is really subverted in that process. It's literally the opposite of elections today in the United States in every way. And yet it's happening all around the world. So it's very encouraging. But did I get it right? What do you want to add or
No,
change
it's
or?
great. I mean, you talk about it so beautifully in the book. My favorite reference that you make, and I hadn't thought about it that way, but the minute you framed it that way, I thought, huh, yeah, that's so true. Where you say, if social scientists created a religion, it would look like the Baha'i Faith. I
Yeah,
love
it's
that
like
reference.
designed for humans. Yeah, yeah, like given everything we now know, right, about what humans need to live in a globalized, interdependent world and not destroy each other and the planet.
Now, Amanda, this art of depolarization is going to be a massive priority for Baha'i communities all over the world for the next 25 years. This is a relatively new development within the community. About 18 months ago, this really became this focus on society building really became a priority for us. And of course, we're not just talking about Baha'is in big Western cities. I want you to imagine Baha'i communities in small towns and villages, in the highlands in Papua New Guinea, in the African Congo, in the jungles of Colombia. And there's this
Yeah.
ironclad commitment on the community that for the next 25 years, this is going to be our focus. And we're in the early stages of this. The community is now just starting the process of developing and cultivating and building these new skills. But it's something you're going to see a lot of effort certainly marshaled around. So, knowing that, what advice would you have for the Baha'i community?
Well, I mean, I have heard this and I'm very excited about it. it would be really the height of arrogance for me to give advice to, to a community that has dealt with a lot of persecution over the years and is quite familiar with the challenges of high conflict. So I don't know, except that the more you can tell these stories of what you are already doing, the more you can show that the way we set up institutions determines how we treat each other, right? Like that kind of thing is hugely hopeful, and I think maybe reassuring, at least to me, that there are Baha'is all over the world operating, not perfectly, right? I mean, there's plenty of tensions and
Absolutely.
problems,
Absolutely. Of course.
but kind of cultivating the norms and traditions and vocabulary that help create healthy conflict, as opposed to just avoiding conflict, which is what a lot of religious faiths try to do, or blowing up in dysfunctional conflict, which is what we're seeing a lot of in a lot of churches and synagogues and other places now.